Imagine, you wake up in the morning, look out the window, and see that the sun is rising not in the east, as always, but in the west. At first, it seems like just some strange dream. But if this is happening for real, it means something so serious has happened to our planet that an ordinary day could become the beginning of the end. Because the sun can't just start moving in the other direction. If it rose in the west, that means either the Earth has suddenly changed its direction of rotation, or something so catastrophic has occurred that the familiar laws of the world have stopped working. And here is where the most interesting part begins. What will happen to the weather, the oceans, people, cities, and life itself on Earth? Why does the sun rise in the east? To understand the consequences, we first need to figure out why the sun rises in the east in the first place. In reality, the sun doesn't move around us the way it appears. It's the Earth that rotates on its axis from west to east. That is exactly why it seems to us that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If the Earth were to suddenly start rotating in the opposite direction, the picture in the sky would change completely. The sun would rise in the west and set in the east. But this wouldn't just be a beautiful astronomical effect. It would mean a global reversal of the entire planetary system of motion. And the consequences would be instantaneous and devastating. What would happen in the first minutes? If the Earth were to suddenly stop and start rotating in the opposite direction, the initial consequences would be catastrophic. Everything on the surface would continue moving by inertia. And this means that oceans, the atmosphere, buildings, trees, and people would find themselves subjected to a gigantic force. The air wouldn't have time to turn around along with the planet. As a result, hurricane-force winds would begin, with speeds that could reach hundreds of meters per second. The seas and oceans would rise into colossal waves. Coastal cities would be struck by water almost immediately. Essentially, if this were to happen abruptly, it wouldn't just be a change in the sunrise. It would be a planetary apocalypse in the very first minutes. What would happen to weather and climate? Even if we imagine that the Earth didn't change its rotation instantly, but did so smoothly, the climate would still change radically. Today on our planet, there are stable systems of winds and ocean currents. They depend on the Earth's rotation, the Coriolis effect, and the distribution of solar heat. If the direction of rotation changes, these systems will also rearrange themselves. This means that familiar monsoons, trade winds, cyclones, and ocean currents will become different. Regions where it rains now could become arid, and places we consider temperate could turn into zones of extreme heat or cold. In other words, even without an instantaneous catastrophe, humanity would have to completely adapt to a new planet. What will happen to the oceans? Oceans are one of the most dangerous factors in such a situation. If the Earth's rotation changes, the water won't be able to adjust instantly. It will continue to move by its old inertia, and this will cause global movements of water masses. Gigantic floods, destructive tidal waves, and shifts in water levels across the entire planet are possible. Some coastlines might go underwater, while others, conversely, might temporarily become exposed. Furthermore, the ocean currents that currently transport heat across the planet will change. This will affect fisheries, ecosystems, the climate of entire continents, and the lives of millions of species. Could humanity survive it? To be honest, it all depends on exactly how it happened. If the Earth, by some miracle, started rotating in the opposite direction very slowly, humanity would have a chance to adapt. We would reorganize wind maps, agriculture, energy systems, and urban infrastructure. But if the change happened abruptly, the chances of survival would be extremely slim. Global hurricanes, floods, the destruction of cities, ecosystem failures, and possibly mass extinction would make survival very difficult. So the phrase, "the sun rose in the west," sounds beautiful and mysterious, but it could conceal an event of a planetary scale. Ending. The sun rising in the west is not just an oddity in the sky. It is a signal that the world we know is no longer the same. In reality, such an event would almost certainly mean either a global shift in the Earth's rotation or a catastrophe on such a massive scale that the consequences would affect everything, from winds and oceans to life on land. So, if one morning you see the sun in the west, you will have only one question: is this another new dawn or the beginning of the end?